Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Or good evening, I should say. It's later here in the evening here in the central part of America here, Central Time, Standard Time. So I wanted to jump on here and touch base with you guys again. Haven't been on in a while. As you can see here, we made a few changes to the channel. We changed the name from Random Thoughts with Black Man (RTBM) to Black Media Network, empowering our people. And one of the reasons why we did that, we want to make some changes to our overall thought process as far as how we want to approach this work that we do with this particular channel as we move forward, as we'll start to see some more content more frequently, as opposed to a large lag like we had here about 6 months. But I wanted to jump on tonight in this broadcast, talk to you guys about one of my favorite brothers that are out there, one of his quotes, and also expand upon that, how it affects us today, and particularly today, December 25th, 2018, as it's known on the Gregorian calendar, which is what we're using today. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I really wanted to jump into a quote from a really good brother, Dr. Shaka Musa Barashengo. As you can see here, it's a very profound quote. He says, "For there never was a time when the black man was not, and there never will be a time when the black man will cease to be." Think about that. So from the onset of history, his story, from the time frame of any known man, we were the first known man. And what he's saying here, we will always be on earth as the last known man as well. Because a lot of reports are coming out over the last couple of years talking about the uh, essentially mortality rate that Europeans are having. And also, more importantly, they're not having kids. They're not able to have kids. They're really just starting to die off, essentially, what's happening. But it's important for us to understand that we've always been here and we will be continue to be here. So the key thing we must do, people, in my opinion, is to come together, group together, and rid this world of this European domination, whether that be European domination today or in the future, Chinese domination. We don't want to be dominated by any people. We want to control our own destiny. But as we tie this into today, today, as you guys know, it's December 25th. But the funny thing about it, uh, it's Christmas Day, or celebrated as Christmas Day. Many people of the Christian faith celebrate this day. You need to know people who are not of the Christian faith understand and recognize this day to be one of the more notable holidays. But the funny thing about it is the way the calendar has been set up and the calendar system of what this day really signifies, as opposed to what the Europeans tell us it signifies. Because that's one of the key things we have to understand and recognize in and of ourselves as Black people, that they have seemed to rewrite history through their own eyes. But if you think about that with anything that you do in life, that that you're competing in, it's a sport, for example. When you win, you get to tell the story in the manner in which you like to, because you won, especially with war. And essentially, that's what they've done. They've won over the past 500 to 700 years. They've beaten us back, beaten us down, and have essentially dominated and controlled the globe. And as such, in the 1500s, they changed the calendar. Uh, they went from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. And as such, they changed a lot of the dates and the meaning behind a lot of these significant events, that this calendar was truly based off of our ancestors, the Africans in Egypt, and even further north, which the way Africa's set up, if you look at the Nile, it flows, it flows the opposite direction. When you're looking at a map today, it's south really, if you look at it, but they say it's north. So really in the heart of Africa, Central Africa, where all civilization from the globe was generated and created, as brother Dr. Barashango says, that was where the calendaring system was developed. And then it migrated south, which is north, if you look at the map, towards Egypt. And even in Egypt at the time, a lot of the Egyptians at that time were Africans who looked like you and I. And we developed this calendaring system based upon the rise of the Nile. And really what was happening at that time, there were 3 different segmentations of the year. And it was a 12-month calendar. And it was a 365 days or 355 days or so, I should say. And it would typically what happened is you would end the year and you have 5 days of festivities that really did not count as a part of the year itself, but they were segmented up based on the Nile Valley. And it was chopped up into 12 months, very similar to the way it is today. Although what they did today is they chopped it up into 4 different seasons, as opposed to we have 3 different segments of the actual calendar year. And so one of the key portions of that segment was that time frame of December 21st to December 25th, where you have that winter solstice. And so what was happening at that time was you would have the sun disappear essentially from 21st, and then what will happen is the sun will reappear, it will rebirth itself. And so as you hear what I'm saying the sun and a sun. And so what happens is these Europeans, and they're not understanding the culture and our wisdom and the total genius of our ancestors, and maybe they did and they just decided to do this anyways. They created this Jesus character and then this Christmas based around that as the birth period. Because if you think about that, it was a rebirth of the sun in those periods. And what was happening is around December 25th, you would notice as that sun reappeared, the days would get longer. So that was moving into a different part of the calendar year itself. So a lot of these things that we're doing today are based off of our African ancestors. But essentially all they did is they did a Milli Vanilli, right? You guys remember Milli Vanilli? They were lip singing. They had real singers in the background who were actually singing the song for them. And so that's essentially what they've done. They've Milli Vanilli'd us into believing that this European Gregorian Julian calendar was something that the European came up with in their infinite genius. But yet they do not tell you they learned all these things from our ancestors and just repurposed it, renamed it, and changed it up. The funny thing is, man, our ancestors were so genius in the way that they separated up the calendar and the celestial map, or the celestial map, I should say, over these thousands of years of learning it in that Dogon tribe. You guys heard that before. These brothers still around to this day. But they separated up so beautifully that what they call these leap years, the European was not even doing a leap year at that time. They learned it from us. Because what happened is, at the time, the Europeans, they were thinking, and we told them this, what you would do is you'd have 1,460 years. Every 1,460 years, you would basically add another year, what they were thinking. But we said, no, the smartest way to do it is, you add an additional day every 4 years. And so that becomes your leap year, is what they call it here today. So these are the type of things our ancestors were very cognizant of at that time and had thought out, because if you think about our civilization as Black people, we've been on this earth millions of years. This European is fairly new. And so that's what really just irks me a lot about our current situation that we're in today, is we don't fully understand the history and understand what the true meaning of these European holidays are, and how it can create such a mental genocide in and of itself to our people, not only to our people as adults, but more specifically as children, especially when you talk about this Santa Claus, this white Jesus, all these different things like that. The white Jesus is mentally genocide. The white Santa Claus is genocide as well, not to mention the financial strain we put on ourselves as African people in general, specifically if you look here in the U.S. alone, with our constant consumption of products that don't really have any true intrinsic value at the end of the day. We go out, spend all this money on these Christmas gifts for our kids, and then a year later, a lot of stuff isn't around. Hell, even 6 months later, or 3 or 4 weeks later, they're not even playing with those stupid toys. So one of the things they've done, when I say they, this European, with this white supremacy, where they've been able to control us through these mental gymnastics that they develop, is really amazing. And it's frustrating because if our people just sit down and think introspectively and understand what's really going on with the world today and think critically about the things that are going on, I think we can definitely move our way out of this situation. Matter of fact, I know we can. Because as Brother Dr. Barashengo says, for there never was a time when the black man was not, there never will be a time when the black man will cease to be. And so once we understand that, truly think about that, take that into our being, into our soul, think about it, then we have to develop a path forward, develop a plan to execute to get us out of the mental slavery that we're in today. Because to me, that's one of the key problems we have today is this mental slavery. And a lot of it has to do with us going out blindly accepting all of these different things that this European tells us and never questioning and asking why. Like one of the funny things is I never grew up in the black church. I was a Muslim, grew up al-Islam, all those types of things. But going to church with my grandmother and grandparents, one of the things that you often hear is you never question the Bible, never question the Word of God. But if you go back and you think about that, if you come from that type of mindset, then that means you'll never question anything in most cases. But how can you not question something if you're a thinking person, man or woman, that is? And what that happens, if you go think about the history of African people here in the U.S., that goes back to slavery, where when the white slave master was teaching you this religion, this Christianity, one of the key things was never question it. It can't be questioned, right? And so what we've done is we've carried that on into today. And so if you go and you think about some of the things that the comments some of these politicians have made, and even some of these fools that you see out here on TV that call themselves so-called black leaders. One of them, for example, was your president, Barack Obama. He made a speech, I think it was either at Howard University a couple of years ago. And, it was at Morehouse. And he was, in his little section where he's talking about, well, what we got to do, we got to be better fathers, we got to do this, we got to do that. All this nonsense of blaming black men, trying to talk down and tell us what we need to be doing. He comes up and talks about, well, there's no reason because slavery was so long ago. What's your excuse? Well, one of the key questions I would ask that brother is this. What type of food do you eat? What's your religion in most cases today, if slavery was so long? Matter of fact, what is your name? What language do you speak if slavery was so long? Think about that. If slavery was such a long time ago and it has no impact on who and what we are today, then why the hell am I speaking English to you right now? Why, if I go over to Africa, there's so many of those countries within our continent where the brothers and sisters there are speaking French, English, German, and in some cases, let's look down in Haiti, patois, right? That broken English and French, or Creole. Why are they not speaking their native African tongue if slavery and colonization was so long ago? What food are we eating here in the U.S. today? We're still eating chitlins and ribs and fried chicken. Think about this. Chitlins are the worst part of a pig. It's intestines. Ribs are one of the worst parts of the pig or even a cow that you can eat. But we're running out here still eating this mess today. Why? Because in slavery, that was the only part the slave master would give us because that's what he didn't want. But guess what? That wisdom of our black mothers, grandmothers, they would take that nonsense and make food out of it to keep us sustained and alive, and so that we can continue on and break out of shackles of slavery one day, so their grandchildren and great grandchildren can live better lives than they lived at that time. The question is, are we really living those better lives? Yeah, we may not have shackles physically on ourselves every day. And yeah, they may be paying us a couple dollars when we go work for the white man at these companies, but are we still mentally enslaved? I mean, that's really the most key piece of it. Because if you think about it, for example, with an elephant, you guys have seen elephants at the circus, right? So what you have is you have this big, 10 to 12 ton animal who is stuck with this little rope around his ankle that is just tacked into the ground with a hammer or a mallet. That thing could not hold that elephant if the elephant truly wanted to get away and be free. However, what happened is when that elephant was a baby, when the elephant was helpless, did not have the strength to pull itself away with that little anklet on, it tried to initially because it was not mentally enslaved. But after so long and so many times of it trying to get away when it was a baby, it realized, you know what? I'm never going to get away. I'm never going to be free. However, when that same elephant is much stronger as an adult and can easily pull that little anklet off out of the ground, it doesn't do it. Why? Because it's still mentally enslaved. Folks, that's where we are today as Black people. Whether it's here in the US or it's globally, we're still an elephant. We're still mentally enslaved. We still think we can't pull that little anklet off of our ankle and walk away. We're strong enough. We're big enough. We're not babies anymore. We have the knowledge. We have the resources. The question is, what are we going to do? Are we actually going to come together as a unit and group loyalty, group initiative, and group cooperation, group economics to bind ourselves together as a nation of people, whether it be here in the US or globally as a Pan-African nation, to exert our will for freedom, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness? Those same things that these founders of the United States of America said that they wanted for their white people here in America. You gotta remember that didn't include the Black folks who were here in bondage at the time. The question is, are we gonna be able to do that? And I say, yes, we can. I know we can. The question is, do we as a people have the will to do so? Do we have the leadership within each and every one of us? And when I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about some mythical leader that's gonna, pull us out of bondage like Moses. I'm talking about each individual person. You have to have that desire, that passion, that leadership inside of you. It starts at home. Each one of us, especially as brothers, we're the head of the household. We must lead our individual household group. And if we collectively group together in a group, that becomes a community, right? A small community unit. That community unit then can become a stately unit, right? So within a state. And then that state can become a nation. So as you build those things out, we must start here together at home, working to understand how we can build better families and then expound that out. But these are the things that we can do, people. I know we can. We have the ability. The question is, do we have the collective will to do it together as a people? And to, first of all, acknowledge that we are Black people, man. We're not colored people. We're not people of color and all this other nonsense. We're not a freaking minority. We are Black people. And I'll get on the whole minority thing in another broadcast. But that we have to get off of that. We have to not be ashamed of who we are. We are Black people. As Brother Dr. Barashango says, for there never was a time when a Black man was not, and there never will be a time when a Black man will cease to be.